What's going on, everyone? My name is Scott Medlin. I'm a former police officer, and I came across something that Attorney General Pam Bondi said on September 15th. If you have not noticed it already, she said on a podcast, you can't have that hate speech in the world in which we live. She said there is no place, especially now after what happened to Charlie Kirk in our society. Then she went on to say basically that if there's hate speech, we are coming after you. To which I, as a former police officer, was like, wait a minute, I don't promote hate or anything like that, but there is free speech. So I got to thinking, we got to get to the legality behind all this, especially for aspiring police officers and current law enforcement officers when it comes to what they can and cannot do when it comes to the First Amendment. And I thought to bring Zach Miller back onto the channel. He is a legal instructor with Blue to Gold. Zach, I, for one, it just raised a red flag in my opinion, like, whoa, I don't want to go down this slippery slope. So from a legal training perspective, is there a hate speech exception in the First Amendment?
Great question, and I saw the statement by Attorney General Bondi as well. And I will start with a disclaimer that I'm not a First Amendment expert by any means. My area of expertise, I think, is the Fourth Amendment, but I do know a little bit about the First Amendment, and it comes up in our classroom discussions. And unfortunately, it's not something that we cover a lot in law enforcement training as much as we should. So, to your question, there are exceptions to the First Amendment. Like, not all speech is not protected. It's not a categorical right to say whatever you want to, free from government intervention, but there are very few exceptions. And one of them is not hate speech. Hate speech, there is no such thing as a hate speech exception to the First Amendment. First of all, hate speech is very subjective. Like, what is it? What's hate speech to me may not be hate speech to you. It's just, hate speech, I think of it's just something that you don't like in particular. And it's not protected. It is truly protected speech. I think Attorney General Bondi knows that. That's a misstatement on her part.
I truly believe that. And Attorney General Bondi retracted by saying things like speech that crosses the line into, and I'm paraphrasing here, that threatens violence or incites violence. That's different. So what is that legal line police officers should be aware of based on your instruction?
So there are what's called true threats. We're talking about what kind of speech can the government actually criminalize or take some kind of legal action against you. True threats is one of them. And the Supreme Court has defined true threats very narrowly. There's statements that the speaker, and I'm paraphrasing from the Supreme Court, statements the speaker means to communicate a serious expression of intent to commit an act of unlawful violence, particularized to a person or group. So it's got to be a very specific statement, threat, to assault somebody or conduct some other act of violence against a particularized person. Just general threats, general vulgar language is not true threats. It's a very narrow interpretation.
That led me kind of into my next question, as in, if officers are hearing vulgar language, how do they respond, if at all? Because they want to maintain the peace, but yet you don't want to violate anybody's constitutional rights.
Yeah. So, true threats, fighting words is another exception. Vulgarity is not. And so my advice simply is, like, it's directed towards you, like vulgar language or obscene language. It's just ignore it, quite simply ignore it. The Supreme Court has said, particularly when it comes to fighting words or true threats directed towards police officers, they expect officers to have like this heightened sense of invulnerability to words, particularly when those threats are directed at police officers or fighting words against police officers. They're very, very limited in what the Supreme Court allows us to do with it. So basically, just ignore it to the best that you can. We're adults and we swore an oath to protect this First Amendment right. Really, that is the best advice to an officer, is just ignore those words.
Do you find that there are officers who make that mistake of not ignoring those words, or any other mistakes that some make when it comes to people's First Amendment?
Yeah, it's easy to say ignore it. Okay, it's a lot more difficult to actually be confronted with those kinds of things, particularly like ongoing, day in, day out. Like officers, like during the George Floyd protests, those officers in those cities, like it was just day in and day out, they had to endure this stuff. It is difficult. We are human beings as well, and sometimes emotion can get the better of you. But we need to understand what the rules are, what we're expected to endure as police officers, and not let our emotional responses, our emotions, control our responses.
Definitely. And in addition to emotional intelligence, realize how you are doing, and with communicating with others, being able to know how they are. Any other advice you would give, particularly when it comes to if an officer is confronted with hate speech or seeing other people lash out at others with hateful speech, to which we've established like there's no exception. But any other advice you would give?
Understand that, fall back on the oath of office that we took. We swore to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, which is understand what it is our role. Like speech that unpopular speech is actually the speech that probably deserves the most protection. If you think about like speech that few people agree with is the type of speech I would contend the First Amendment is designed to protect. There's unpopular views. Understand why we have a First Amendment. The fact that we swore to uphold and defend the Constitution is an important thing to remember.
Absolutely. Another story, I remember being part of a march, of a protest, and there were counter protesters on the sidewalk, and they were yelling, and they had all kinds of things to say about us, and they also had posters. But I remember there were police officers there just making sure that they did not get in the way of our route, but also because we had the permit route to, parade on the street, but then also just to make sure no one was violent towards us. So the police officers were there just to maintain the peace, and they stood there and they did a great job. And I just wanted to film it and say, this is how you need to be. Every officer, just right here. Like these people were saying very mean things, but they were not disrupting the route and they were not being violent to us, nor were they calling anyone to, hurt us in any way. And it just kept things in perspective, tremendously.
That's the great example. Our role in these situations, particularly when we have counter protesters, just like I said, keep the peace, keep them apart, keep things from spiraling into actual physical violence. It's tough. It's tough as human beings to listen to some of these things that some of these groups say, but this is America. They have a right to say it.
They really do, and we shouldn't take that for granted. I remember when I was in the Marines, I was deployed to Iraq, and I remember listening to some of the Iraqi citizens talk about what it was like living under a true dictatorship. And we can't take this stuff for granted. We absolutely cannot. And the First Amendment is huge. I mean, I think it's the reason why it's number one. I mean, it's just that important.
Obviously what brought all this up is the whole Charlie Kirk assassination. And, I think officers would do well to remember to kind of do what Charlie Kirk was known for. He did not resort to violence or emotional responses. He was a very logical, he took very logical, well-reasoned positions. Whether you agree with his position or not, he was able to support them with facts and logic and not emotion. And I think officers, if maybe we can kind of remember that as well. Emotional responses they're never productive. Logic and reason is the better way to go.
Yeah, love how you brought that up. And Zach, I appreciate you. You said you weren't a First Amendment expert. You've worked at Blue to Gold long enough and had enough classroom discussions about it where you gave a lot of good information. So thank you. Now, obviously, at many departments, it can be a challenge to get up to date and effective legal training. So for those officers who know that they're lacking in that area or would like to refresh on case law and stuff, how the heck can they either get in touch with you, but find continuous training through Blue to Gold?
Yeah, I mean, so me personally, my email, the best way to reach out to me is Zach, ZACH at bluetogold.com. And our bluetogold.com website, we've got tons of great resources there, all of our upcoming trainings, how to reach out to us if you're interested in bringing us out to your agency.
Outstanding. Well, thanks again, Zach. And to anyone watching, if you want to learn more about the Fourth Amendment, which Zach specializes in, then click this right here. If that's your next video to watch, go right there right now.
Appreciate it, Scott.